Welcome, and thanks for joining us for the 700th episode of The Paul Leslie Hour. 700. But hey, who's counting? We're just getting started. On today's episode, we're joined by singer-songwriter recording artist Bob Livingston. In addition to his solo records, Livingston's worked with the greats of Texas music: Michael Martin Murphey, the Los Gonzo Band, Jerry Jeff Walker, and Ray Wiley Hubbard. You know, the Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by viewers and listeners like you, so please visit www.thepaulleslie.com/support, and we thank you. Now we present a phenomenal talent, a heck of a nice guy, and a grand storyteller, Bob Livingston, here on the 700th episode of The Paul Leslie Hour. Go, fellas.
Well, folks, it's the 700th episode of the Paul Leslie Hour, and I'm joined here by a folk rock legend. Bob Livingston is a singer-songwriter from Texas, a raconteur. He has been appointed as an ambassador of goodwill by the state of Texas. Also, the city of Austin named him Austin's International Music Ambassador. That's really something. He's an inductee of the West Texas Walk of Fame and the Texas Music Legends Hall of Fame. Those are some really impressive titles.
Thank you very much.
And you've written some great songs. You've appeared on many legendary albums, performed countless shows, and has really made quite an impression in the world of music. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Paul. Good to be here. I've heard a lot about your show, and I'm in the 700 Club, 700 show. No, there's nobody else can be in the 700 Club but you and me.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's a great pleasure. And you're checking in from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. How is Baton Rouge?
Oh, it's a beautiful day out there. The Mississippi River is just right down from my hotel, and it's gorgeous up here. I'm playing the Red Dragon Listening Room tonight. It's a wonderful spot, you know, just a listening audience, and looking forward to it. That's going to happen a little bit.
So much of what I was saying, I think I said Texas like 5-6 times in the introduction. What kind of a effect do you think being from Texas has had on you?
Gosh, I don't know about what kind of effect it's had. I mean, of course, we're always proud of Texas, and it's bigger than life and everything. And I do sort of brag about it some, especially being from Austin, Texas. It's in the news a lot, live music capital of the world and all that. I think I grew up in Texas, and I'll probably be here all my life unless I move someplace like Abu Dhabi or Bombay. You know, I've been to both those places.
Interesting. You know, I like to go right into the heavy stuff. What has always been the purpose of the art you create?
The purpose? Well, I like to make people feel good. I like to inform them. I'm a storyteller as well. And so I have a lot of stories connected with the various songs. If I do a cover song, I'll have a story about it where I either met the person that wrote it or I played on it, like Redneck Mother, for instance. It's not my song, but I played on the recording, played on several versions of that, and it was written by Ray Wiley Hubbard, and he's a good friend. So, you know, I kind of inform the people and try to make them feel good. There's laughter, there's a lot of humor in it, but sort of a Texas music history, the real story, I'm calling it. But I think that just the idea of music take you away from your work, everyday cares and stuff. And that's what I like to do. I like to provide people a respite from all that.
Well, there's so many things that you do in music, from your own albums, appearing on albums from everyone from Jerry Jeff Walker, Michael Martin Murphey, the Los Gonzo Band, Butch Hancock, so many different artists. Could you say that there is a certain facet of music, whether it's the recording, the live performing, something that you feel more drawn to or more excited by?
I'm probably more excited by live performing than any of it. I do wear a lot of hats. I've been a bass player, guitar player, piano. I've played on people's records and stuff. Bass was my sort of not really instrument of choice, but by luck and a necessity. Way back when I played with Michael Murphy, it was like 1970 or so, 71. I had a record deal in California. It fell through. There was only one thing to do, and that was get back to Texas, it seemed, to both Murphy and I. And he said, I've got gigs back there. You play bass. And I said, bass? I don't know how to play bass. And he said, you'll learn. And he handed me a Fender Precision bass. From that time forward, I became a bass player for hire and played with a lot of people. And I love the live performance aspect, and especially my own band and my own solo endeavors. I'm up here to play a singer-songwriter club tonight, and I love that one-on-one with the audience. I'm unafraid when I do that kind of thing. So I really like that. But I like playing on albums too. It's a lot of fun.
Who would you say has taught you the most about live performing?
Well, Ray Wiley, for one, Jerry Jeff for another. Ray is just so animated and funny, and he tells stories as well, and he can bring you right into the scene of the song. And that's kind of like what I do, is to, if I'm going to tell the story, it'll be leading up to the actual song. Jerry Jeff always called a great set. It was really high energy, just bam, bam, bam. He didn't speak much, but he really knew how to bring that crowd up and then lay them down. He was a genius at that, really. And even if he had had one too many drinks, he still could just do it and bring it. So I think those two guys would be my heroes in that regard.
There have been some artists through the years that have recorded songs that you wrote. Who was the first artist to cover a Bob Livingston song?
Well, Ray Hubbard, when I first met Ray, he wasn't Wiley yet. It was in 1969 in Red River, New Mexico. And I had come up there from Lubbock, fresh out of the nest. I was green as green could be. And I met this group. They were called Three Faces West: Rick Fowler, Wayne Kidd, and this wise ass Ray Hubbard. And we all became good friends. We started writing songs, and he and I wrote a song called Life in the Pines. And that was Three Faces West's first single. So I'd got, it was a co-write. I love to co-write. And that was probably the first one. And then Jerry Jeff ended up recording several of mine. And so, that kind of thing.
Since you brought up Jerry Jeff Walker, I used to have a show on Radio Margaritaville, Buffett Station, and we used to play a song that you wrote all the time, Wanted for Love.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about what inspired that?
Well, we flew when Jerry Jeff quickly realized that the way we would get around, he got an airplane. And we flew from, I don't know, sometime the early 80s forever after that in an airplane. And sometimes two, sometimes three. The Los Gonzo Air Force. But we had to have a really good pilot, and we had a lot of different pilots, but this one pilot, his name is Lane Bybee. He flew us, and he had this idea for the song, "I'm Wanted for Love." And, we sat down and talked about it and kind of wrote it. And I, helped with the music and the chords and first verse or so. Then, when Jerry Jeff got to it, he kind of put it in his, he'll do that. He'll kind of change things around where he's comfortable singing it. I remember once on stage, and we were doing a Guy Clark song, I think "Boats to Build" or something like that. And Jerry Jeff was singing maybe one word wrong. Instead of "the," it was "be," whatever. And Guy was going, "Why did he change it? That completely ruins the song. Why did he do that?" And he's doing that in my ear while we're singing. So Jerry Jeff, he takes it, makes it his own. But it was just the idea of, I'm wanted for love. I'm wanted for this and that and the other. And but the main thing is I'm wanted for love. And the pilot was a sort of a Lothario sort of guy that could sing that and mean it.
For
sure.
Well, that album that it appears on, Cowboy Boots and Bathing Suits, that's like a cult favorite kind of album. Played all the time on Radio Margaritaville, for example. Do you have any memories from the making of that album?
Yes, it was recorded in Belize. Most of it at Jerry Jeff's house. He has a house, Casa Gonzo, there on the beach, and 300-foot long boat dock. And he just wanted to Jerry Jeff was always the guy that wanted to record in surroundings. I mean, the first record we did with him, which was just called Jerry Jeff, it's the Brown album, had LA Freeway on it. We recorded in the world's most primitive conditions in Austin, just, funky big room with burlap all over the walls and a tape recorder in the center of the room. Everything just plugged straight in, no board, no noise reduction. We just plugged everything in and played. And then the second one we did, of course, Viva Terlingua, which was done out there in the wilds of Lukenbach, inside and outside the dance hall. And so he was always looking, rather than going to a studio. And he had bought this place in Belize and loved it. And he said, "I want to make the record there." So we flew out to Belize and took the ferry over, or whatever it was, to Ambergris Key, his key, that island. And we set up in the house, and we were using ADATs. Remember that technology? It was a different kind of technology than they use today. But our sort of road manager, sound guy, Charles Ray, brought those with him. We set that up, and we recorded for 2 or 3 or 4 days. And then we ended up playing a live show one of those nights, and took all the stuff over and recorded that there. But it was a lot of fun. And, just this boat dock, was amazing. And they'd come over every day and get us to do something new, like scuba diving or go out. It's the largest, the second largest barrier reef in the world, behind the Great Barrier Reef. And it's just right out there. You could just throw a stone right in it. So it was a lot of fun, Belize, for sure.
Now, not just of the songs that other people have recorded, but from your own albums, is there a song of yours that, if you could pick one song to be representative of what you do, like the song that maybe 50, 60 years from now people would listen to, what would that song be?
Well, there's a song that I wrote called Original Spirit, and it's on this album it's called Original Spirit now. The album was called Mahatma Gandhi and Sitting Bull. And I knew I'd made a tragic mistake naming the album when I was in Lubbock, going on a little radio tour, and, they play something and they interview you. And this DJ said, "Well, that was Bob Livingston from his latest album, Mahatma Gandhi and Sitting Bull. And he just looked at me, and I knew, oh God, I made a mistake. So the next run, we called it Original Spirit, but it was written, in a couple of places in the world, started in India. And it has a lot of images like that. It has a groove. It gets me into my mojo. Like I usually open, Jerry Jeff ought to open with getting by on getting by. That's his, it just gets him right there. It's a great sound check song as well. And my song, Original Spirit, I come from that rhythm section background. So when I'm playing it, it's just, it has a great groove, and I sing it, and I get in the mood, and I get in the mojo, and I look down, and people's feet. I play a harmonica part on it, so I'll look down, and everybody's feet are tapping, and I know I've got them already. So, Original Spirit would be it.
That's cool. Last night I went and I saw Bob Dylan in concert.
Whoa!
And that made me think a lot of Bobs here: Bob Livingston, Bob Dylan, and Bob Johnston. And for all the viewers out there, they probably recognize that name, Bob Johnston, but really legendary record producer who produced Michael Martin Murphy, Bob Dylan. I think Simon and Garfunkel didn't he?
He's the one that when Simon and Garfunkel was out of the room for tonight, he's the one that put the drums and lead guitar on Sounds of Silence. When they arrived the next morning, it was like, it horrified him, but it was a hit. He also produced Live at Folsom Prison,
right?
All of Leonard Cohen's stuff, Lester Flatt, the Flatt and Scruggs. He was a heavyweight.
And you had the opportunity to work with Bob Johnston.
Yes.
What was he like?
Well, I first met him when Murphy and I we were at this little club in Dallas called, I can't believe it just went out, the Rubaiyat. And it was the folk club in Dallas. And we would play there and then go on to Colorado and come back around down to Houston and Austin, and then go back to, we had a little folk circuit, and we were living in California still at that time, but we would come back and play. And we kept hearing of this guy, Bob Johnston. And there was a fellow there, his name is R.A. Caldwell. And he kept saying, oh, Bob Johnston, Bob's a brother. He's a brother. And this guy was like a painter, a house painter. And he kept saying, and finally I just said, if he's such a brother, get him here. And he did. And we scheduled a little audition at that club at like 2:30 in the afternoon. And we were waiting for him. It's real dark, dark, folky kind of hippie club. And it got to be 2:30. He's not there. 2:45, almost 3:00. And we looked at each other and said, he's probably not coming. And all of a sudden the door burst open. He's like this banty rooster. He's only about 5'4" or something. And he was all exuberant. As the first thing he said was, hey, I just wrote a song on the way from the airport. Is there a piano in here? He said, well, there's one on stage. So he sat down at the piano. He hasn't said anything else but that. And he starts playing this gospel song he wrote. And it was pretty good. And we looked at each other and said, hey, great. He goes, you like that one? Here's one I wrote last week. And he started another one. And Murphy picked up his guitar and I picked up my bass. And pretty soon we're playing with Bob Johnston. And for a couple of songs, he said, but I didn't come here to, play my songs. Which one of you is Murphy? And Murphy said, that's me. So he said, let me hear what you got. And we got on, and we could not see him. It was so dark and the lights were in our face. It was an empty folk club with just him out there. And Murphy played a song that he had written called The Ballad of Calico. And it was in the history of it, it's a pretty famous song because he wrote this country rock opera, and Kenny Rogers in the first edition, it was their last album. It was called The Ballad of Calico. And it's just this beautiful song. And there's all these changes and this great lick that comes after the first verse. And when we were just into it, really the first line or two, and Johnston, we heard this voice say, "That's the most beautiful thing I've heard. I don't need to hear anymore. You got a record deal as far as I'm concerned." And this is like a couple of lines. He said, "But keep on playing it." So we finished it. And then we did Texas Morning, another Murphy song, and a song called Natchez Trace that was all on the first, that Geronimo's Cadillac album. And the Geronimo's Cadillac hadn't been written yet, but he just said, "This is great. Let's sit down and talk about it." So we sat in this little, he was just like, he's across from Murphy, and I'm sitting over here. And he does not look at me. He does not pay any attention to me at all. And he's focused on Murphy. And he says, "I really think your songs are magical and genius. And I want to make a record with you. What are you doing next Wednesday?" I've got Studio A in Columbia, Nashville. It's the biggest, Studio A, Columbia, where Blonde on Blonde was recorded, Nashville Skyline, all that stuff, great orchestras, just giant room. And he says, "I've got that. And I think it's George Jones I'm supposed to be doing some stuff on, but I'm going to reschedule him. You come on Wednesday. We'll cut Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday." So this is like a duo. I'm playing bass, Murphy's playing guitar, and Murphy says, "Well, great." And he says, "Are you coming?" And he said, "Well, yeah." And then he still hasn't talked to me or looked at me. And finally, Bob says, "What about him?" And Murphy said, What do you mean?" He goes, "What about him?" He goes, "You mean Bob?" He goes, "Yeah, what about him? Is he funky?" And Murphy said, "Well, just look at him. What do you think?" So he turned and looked straight at me and said, "You come too." And so we drove Murphy's mother's Buick the next Wednesday to Nashville, and Charles John Quarto, who is a poet, and they ended up writing Geronimo's Cadillac, the two of them. And we recorded just the two of us, the whole album. And then they came back later. And Johnston was the kind of guy that in the session, the first thing he said was, we were sitting there, it's a cold day right there, edge of winter, in 72, I think it was. And Bob came in and he had this lamp, and the lamp had a white light burning, a crossbar, and a red light that was kind of dead. And he put that lamp on this folding chair and said, "When that red light comes on, we're engaged in the recording process, boys. And there's magic in this room. And there's some of the greatest music of all time been recorded in here. And there's magic in you. And you're going to contribute to that magic. And we're going to ride that wave. Have a great time." And when that red light went on, I mean, that album was recorded. There was no, one take. Maybe one or two songs had two takes at the most, but he just liked to capture the feel and the magic. And it's not, it didn't matter if you're out of tune or make a mistake. We'll get it, fix it. We didn't have to fix anything though. We were so rehearsed, Murphy and I, and I'm playing like bass. I've never played really before. I had never played with a drummer. And so I'm kind of getting around on the bass a little more than a bass player would. Bass player, is bump, bum, 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 and thinking what the kick drum is doing a lot. I didn't have that in my head yet. So I'm playing all over the place. And Kenny Buttrey was the drummer, Nashville A-list, triple A list. Drummer when he went in, and I felt sorry for him having to do it, but he did it. So that was that album, Geronimo's Cadillac. And Bob was always up, just enthusiastic and very, he just made us feel like we were special. And that's how he pulled out these great tracks.
Bob, is there something that you are most proud of?
Most proud of? Wow, what a question. Well, I'm proud of playing on these, coming to find out, historic albums like Viva Terlingua. It's the 50th anniversary of Viva Terlingua next year. And it's the 50th anniversary of the Lost Gonzo Band. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm wearing my Lost Gonzo Band. Is it backwards?
No.
No, okay.
No.
And the Lost Gonzo Bands, we've come back. It's the return of the Lost Gonzo Band. We put it back together with our manager, Dee Foster, and we've been doing great and playing some really great shows and having a lot of fun with that. That's Gary P. Nunn, John Inman, me. Freddie Kirch is the drummer. He played with Jerry Jeff for 14, 15 years. And it's just so I'm proud of playing on some of these iconic Texas albums, Geronimo's Cadillac, Cosmic Cowboy for Murphy, and all of the Jerry Jeff stuff's pretty proud. I'm also proud of going and working for the State Department and going to countries that we may never go through to again, Syria, Yemen, places like that. We're all over the Middle East, all over India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, went to Vietnam, Thailand, and Africa, several places in Africa. So I've really enjoyed those adventures, and I'm proud of my work with that. And it was just a wonderful experience for sure.
Today, I was driving through Gainesville, Georgia, and I went to this restaurant, Alpha Gyro Grill, and the owner, a Greek man, it was like we were just sitting there talking, and all of a sudden we start talking about Nana Muscuri. And it was just amazing to me. And I'm sure that given what you just said, you have observed this, that music just has this ability. Two people either witnessing music or talking about music, suddenly you become friends.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's amazing when you talk about it, you're talking from your perspective and he's talking from his. Why we like something, oh God, I love that. And it does. It's a great bridge for sure.
Well, Bob, I hope that we are able to connect again on down the road. I always like to end the show very open-ended. I give the guest the stage. We have people listening from all over the place. And a dog barking in the background.
I love it.
But what would you say to all the folks who are tuned in with us?
Well, thank you for tuning in. My name is Bob Livingston. I'm from Austin, Texas. I'm a singer-songwriter. I think you'd like to hear me when I come to your town to play. I believe in music, and I believe in the power of the spoken word as well, stories. I've been a lot of places. I've been everywhere, and I'm sort of, in a way, unflappable because of that. I've had a lot of experience being on the road. Just drove up here from Austin, and whether it's airplane or train, it's just a way of life for me. And people sometimes say, "Man, when are you going to retire and give this up?" And what would I do if I retired? Like Willie said, all I do is play music and golf. What do you want me to do? And that's kind of the way I am too, where you just play music and it's, and they call it play, and it's a lot of fun, and it's not a regular job by any means. And I'm really lucky to have had it. And, thank you so much for tuning in.
Yes. And thank you folks for sticking with me through all these episodes. It means a lot to me. And be sure the gateway to Bob Livingston online, you all want to go to www.boblivingstonmusic.com.
That's right.
boblivingstonmusic.com. Well,
or you can go to my Facebook page, Bob Livingston Music, or just Bob Livingston, friend me, or, like that Facebook page. You'll get all the shows coming up on that, as well as the website for sure.
Well, Bob, sir, I know you got a show to do. And I also have to say, thank you to our very, very special friend, a great artist who has helped me so much, Willis Allen Ramsey.
Oh, yeah, Willis.
Gotta love that guy.
Thank you, Willis.
All right. Until next time.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
You know, the Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by people like you, listeners, viewers. Please go to thepaulleslie.com/support, and you'll know what to do when you're there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who contributes. Video editing today by Kumar. Performance of The Entertainer intro song by John Primorano. And of course, this is your announcer speaking. See you next time on the Paul Leslie Hour.